So Gfaive, we create the first fashion collection forecast and management platform with the use of artificial intelligence. And why we decided to look this direction is because consumers' buying behavior is constantly changing. And because of that, it's really hard to predict what customers will be buying. And that leads to decreasing in retail margins, and the competition for customers is really, really fierce among retailers. And they have a lot of questions that they need to answer, like what would be the next winning styles for them? What is the optimal collection balance? And which factors would influence the demand of their customers? Because historical sales data is not enough anymore, especially after the COVID-19 situation. So how it works right now? How do the brands make the forecast? They have to find a lot of data, combine the data from various sources, like take historical sales data from internal sources, and then hopefully combine it with the social media, fashion trends, and macroeconomic indicators that influence the demand, and do it over and over a few times, spending a lot of working time on that just to be able to answer the really important questions, like what would be the winning styles, how much and what to produce, what is the optimal collection balance, and which factors will influence the demand. So how it works with Gfaive? We take basically the same data, so historical sales data from the brand, social media, fashion trends, and macroeconomic indicators, and all the external factors. We look for the factors that are relevant specifically to your brand. And then all this information, all this data is run through algorithms in our platform. And then we provide you with the accurate demand prediction, and also so you understand which item where and when will be sold. We give you understanding of what would be the best category balance, so assortment optimization, and your collection evaluation, which product attributes will be demanded the most. So it's actually very important for pre-production stage of the for the brand, so you understand what to produce. In our advanced predictive analytics platform, our platform is can be easily integrated into existing IT ecosystem, so you can easily see all the results integrated into your existing dashboards, or you can see it in Gfaive dashboards. And then we have these BI dashboards where you can track also your key business performance in real time. We have already done a pilot project, and the results that our customer was able to reach with this pilot project is reduce in production cost by eliminating overstock situation by 30%, increase of sell-through rate by over 5%, an increase in revenue, and this is just by targeting out of stock situation by 0.5%. So what we suggest is to start with us with a free pilot project that will allow you to evaluate business impact. And we will provide you in 30 days after we receive all the needed data from you, with a clear vision of ranking of demanded items by geography, accurate demand forecast on SKU level, optimal balance of your collection, ranking of internal and external factors that have impact on your sales, and any other actionable findings we can find in your data that can help you to improve your KPIs. And it actually requires a little time investment now, but will give you a huge advantage in the future. Our team We have two co-founders, Andrei and Maria, who have great experience in developing companies. We have two business analysts present here is Irina and Yelena. We have our CTO, Mikhail, two data scientists, Kirill and Nikita, and I'm Irina. I'm head of sales. Uh, we uh, we were getting the information about the business processes, the challenges from our advisors at Startup Bootcamp, and we get advice from such companies as Versace, Diesel, Dolce Gabbana. And we also are looking to extend our solution to textile companies. So we work with Albini Group as well and many, many others. And maybe I should add that we are in discussion of the three new pilot projects as well with Italian and Russian companies. So that's it. If you have any questions, we are ready to answer. Ciao Marco. Ciao Viviana.
Yeah, okay. Hey, hi.
Hi Adina.
Yes, hi, how are you? Hi,
Hi, thank you. And you?
I'm good, I'm good. A very interesting conference so far, so that was very good.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Maria? Yeah.
Hi.
For me, you asked me or someone else?
Yeah, I was asking you, Adina, do you have any questions or?
Yes, I was thinking that the real quality of what your proposition is predictability, and I just wondered how do you what kind of criterion or what kind of assumptions do you make in order to get that to a degree of probability? In other words, to increase the probability of that prediction.
I will let my colleague Irina to answer this question. Irina? Irina, are you here? I don't see her. Yelena. Oh, okay. Irina, yes, please answer.
I'm sorry, I didn't, I couldn't find the microphone. Hello, yes, I don't really think I understood the question. If you could please repeat it.
I think that the proposition, if I understand it correctly, the proposition that you make relates to predictability of demand in relation to combating understock, overstock. Is that correct, first of all?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so how do you think you can achieve a high likelihood of correct predictability?
I think it's mostly the fact that we are not going to just use internal, we don't use just internal data that we get from historical internal data we get from the brands, but we also include in our models external data, for example, fashion trends, social media, that are actually the indicators of what will be demanded in the future.
Yeah, okay. And I found something very interesting in the predictability that supply chains use, for instance, in the retail and the purchases of food. And one of a very perplexing correlation, which I would have never thought about, but which I've noticed, and this might be just an idea. I've noticed in shops is that I often noticed in shops in winter time the sudden appearance of swimsuits, which I found completely ridiculous. And I never understood why. And then I watched a documentary on supply chain, etc., because I'm a specialist in supply chain in my previous business life. And what they were saying was that because of the cold weather in winter, people get very sudden decisions to go for short holidays in the sun. And they have correlated, in fact, a very bizarre factor, which is the increase of travel in winter to hot destinations as the temperatures drop down and it becomes colder in this country, and therefore an increased demand for swimming suits. Now, I'm just giving you an example of a very interesting correlation, which it would have never crossed my mind to go look for that kind of indicator. But I'm just thinking whether you do look at such unlikely correlations, which actually can bring in fact, sales and can create a supply which matches a demand which is totally unexpected otherwise. In other words, when I saw the swimming suits appearing in the middle of December or in January, I thought they are going bad. You know, they've got old stock that they want to flog and they don't know what to do with it, but not at all. It was completely scientific, as well as, for instance, supply of meats for barbecue in relation to rise of temperature above a certain temperature in summer. So all I'm trying to say is whether you are inspired by this kind of information which you think may be useful to you, you know, which is not a naturally sort of occurring correlation in our heads, but where do you look scanning for data? You know, to suddenly find correlation, because we really need to go very far to the travel industry to see how many people go traveling somewhere in December to find a correlation to, you know, or temperatures. Again, temperatures, when they go below 17 degrees, people start behaving in a certain way. When it goes above a certain temperature, people start doing something else. And that's a very, very subtle way of predicting demand.
Yeah, I can elaborate on that. This is we use machine learning algorithms. We take historical data, and one of the models that we use is neural networks, which takes all the data that we feed and it finds those correlations that we might miss or not even visible to our eye, or we not might think of. So yes, we do let the numbers tell us stories sometimes, and this is called data science.
Yeah. No, I understand that. The question was how much data, or where do you go for data? Or is it any data or just certain data? Or it's any data that exists on the planet today? Because there could be a correlation. The more, you know, if you take every data on the planet today, you will find correlations for sure. So I was just thinking, how do you funnel that down into a specific thing?
Well, we plan to use for now fashion trends, social media, and macroeconomic factors. But also, like we said, each client is specific. Each client needs something a little bit tailored, and so we work together with the client in all our phases, and we can test other external data, like you said, maybe the temperature. Also, they understand that they've seen in the past that somehow something has effect. So we actually are quite customizable, and even in the view of what external factors we will be adding for each brand.
Okay, thank you.
I see more people joined our meeting room. Anyone else has a question? Was everything clear, or in our video maybe we need to give you more details on any part of our presentation. Bettina, maybe you have any questions?
Yes, I'm a design manager in the fashion industry. I'm very interested in predictive analytics because, especially in the product development cycle, it's very important to be sustainable, to have a precise forecast. What I'm interested in, you talked more about that you would use mass data, which is public, or let's say from research machines and other things. What I think it's key, it's a integration of the company data with the global data, which makes it more individual and could be a measure-made form of predictive analytics, which, and therefore I want to ask you in which stage you are, because that would mean you would, for example, also think about the production circle of a company you would integrate, that how long time they would need to make the product, probably their sustainable data with who they produce, how sustainable their product is, but also what I think is very important, the quality. If you would integrate the life cycle data of their products, for example, also about reclaims they had before, and how predictive is it to sell their product, which could be very delicate. Okay, I just speak from my experience. Could be too delicate for Japanese market. Could be because they're much more precise, or German market. I'm German. I live in Italy. I work with American, Japan, and Korean markets. So I know those are all data which have been before covered more by consultants, which have the inside data of the markets. Interesting would be now to have to gain this data, update it with the taste of the young generation on the different markets, which would correspond to the particular product a company makes. Because please, one point is, I'm also a designer. You always want to remain a designer to make a personalized product. If you just would make what's predictive, it's going not to be designed a garment. It's artificial intelligent designed garments, which Yahoo has tried, but it didn't work out so far so well. So I'm just looking forward to respond. Sorry, it was a little too much probably I asked about, but it would be very interesting how you try to personalize research in this.
Irina?
Yes, I would like to just say that the first part of your question, we also do use the internal data that the company provides us. Because why is it important to use the internal data as well? Because each company is different, each has its own story, their own customer base. So we are actually the platform that is combining the external data, the fashion trends and everything that we get from the outside world with the data from the actual data from the brand, the sales history, their catalogs, and so on.
So you, Mike, okay, let's make it a very concrete question. I have seen that you work with Data Group, with Workers Pulse, was anyway one of the most important provider of product lifecycle instruments for the fashion industry. Have you thought about a collaboration with them to integrate their, let's say, operative system with your app or your company concept?
I think
yes, yes, we did think about it.
Okay. So that sounds very interesting to me. Sorry, probably because that means that you really step in the direction where I would say if you operative in fashion, what's getting very, very interesting. Last not least, my question, are you also able to make calculates about sustainability of a product if it's provided in different markets? Because transport costs are also considering the recycled system which is available in the country.
Irina?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you repeat, please?
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
The very interesting thing is everybody talks about sustainability, but the sustainability, it's apart from the production, it's also very about where you sell products, how to transport them, to put all this in. So that could be, when you sell certain products here in Italy, it's much more sustainable if you ship them back to Japan or in other countries. But it's also important to who you sell it. What very interesting is today to see the whole product life cycle. It would be perfect if you are predictive, make predictive analytics, also to see, to give inside information you can give the final customer how sustainable the product is when he is buying it actually. That means you have some calculation, how many CO2 you're going to emission has been done before he's going to buy it, to make it a little bit more simple. That means just to integrate sustainability in your predictive, let's say, concept. Have you done this so far, or you think about doing it?
No, so far not, but it seems like a really interesting feature that we could think about as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much, yeah.
Any other questions, Nathaniel?
Not from my side, just so the startup looks great. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
I definitely will study your homepage and go more to detail, because it could be very interesting for collaboration in the future. Okay.
Yes, if any of you would like to know more about our startup, we can set up another meeting, and maybe meet in some other time. If you have any questions, we, can answer them more deeply.
Probably I will contact you directly via LinkedIn.
Yes, sounds very good.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Good afternoon. Is it possible to still ask you a question or not?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Firstly, I do apologize. I came late, so that's why I didn't want to throw a question unless everybody was over, just in case you were going to repeat yourself or somebody else. No, look, your service is quite exciting, because ultimately I've been doing a little bit of work, with retailers, and there's very little science behind their buying and merchandising. And therefore, I think the fact that you're able to combine, I would say, hopefully that forecasting element alongside other trend information is a double whammy, a double winner for me. If you're able to do it well, that's exciting. I would say if nobody is going to be having a question, and I'm happy to share the time, I would say there's two things I'm interested in. It's to really better understand what are the indicators, the KPIs that yourself and themselves are going to look at to be able to improve things, and how easy is it to to drive, I would say, the action plan based on the analytics you're going to provide to the client. Because on occasion, what I've seen with people is they're not always going to be very good and having the discipline, I would say, to do the right stuff on a regular basis and providing that consistency. And on occasion, if you're not going to be behind pushing them to look at the right thing and taking the right course of action, maybe the machine could come to a stop, or not, let's say, produce its full results. So I was willing to have a little bit your feeling on, how much they can do the work on their own, how much you feel, we need to support them to do it and to do it well. I would love to have your input on that.
Well, maybe we should show a demo.
I mean, if the others are agreeable to that,
yes, why not? Yes, I think it's the right time. So Irina, could you please share the screen and show a bit about the MVP? So maybe it's going to be more clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, just 1 second, please. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, 1 more second. Okay.
And I would say today, what have you been able to already use it and see some of the benefits in terms of for clients?
Just one, yes, we had just 1 second. I'm so sorry. I'm
No.
showing the wrong
We
screen.
are now running a few POCs with the fashion brands, and so last week we were finished the first one, and yes, we can I think share the benefits. So maybe while Irina shares the screen, Elena, could you please tell us a bit about the results?
Well, actually, the demo is going to be based on our POC that we did with a footwear retailer. And we had some numbers in our demo. This is based on this case. And yes, they had a challenge of overstocks, and we were able to reduce that. And yeah, this one is actually built on a specific case.
Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about the case as well, and about our platform, and to answer your questions as well. So like my colleague Elena said, we did a POC. We finished it maybe a week ago with a large footwear retailer from Russia. So they're also a retailer that they have seasonal collections. It's the classic autumn, winter, spring, summer, and with 2 product drops. So like we said, the greatest challenge was overstocks. We were able to, in the end, reduce those overstocks and the costs of production by about 30% roughly, and also by just seeing where they produced too much and where our forecasts showed less. And also we saw that we were mostly focused our models on reducing overstocks, but also we saw in moments that there were situations where they had completely went out of stock. And if they had our model at that moment, our model had predicted that they would have had sales of those specific items. So they would have had also some gain in that way as well, having those items on stock. So that's shortly about the case study the case we did. It was a POC, and hopefully that we will go on later with that brand further down. So our dashboard here,
sorry for interrupting. See the screen?
You don't see the screen?
No, I'm not sure. Does everybody?
I do. No, I do see it.
That's great. Okay, so
do you see the platform? I'm sorry. Which screen do you see?
I see the one footwear retail with this graph, actual sales in euro. January 19 to September 19.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was thinking maybe you see the wrong screen. Okay. I'm sorry, Marco. I didn't hear you.
Yeah, it's okay. I think I'm seeing it also.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's good. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about what's under the platform, what's underneath, what we mostly focus on. So our greatest focus is actually what's under all of these numbers, the forecasts. It's the machine learning algorithms. We are focusing mostly to make them very accurate on long-term forecasts. That's why we are including internal and also external data and seeing the relationships between this data. So how do we do our forecasts? We do it based on product attributes. And this is why we are able to forecast new items as well that the brand has not sold before. And we provide these forecasts and allow on our platform the users to analyze these results of our forecasts on multiple dimensions and levels. So they can see, for example, the forecasts in a specific store and by a specific geography, by category, subcategory, down to SKU level, or even see, for example, choose all the shoes that are black and see how they will perform. We see here I'm sorry, the store was not. We see the performance as well. So
can I interrupt or not?
Yes, of course.
Two things. For example, what are the attributes that, for example, in footwear that you would be taking to basically manage the business more effectively?
Okay, which product attributes we would be taking? It all actually depends on the client, the brand, which attributes they have. For example, we had color, fastening, decoration, material, size, heel, everything that is that completely defines and their product. If some brand is not able to give us like a very structured product attributes, maybe they have it more in a way of a description, they don't have it like structured in a database, we can also work with a description of the items and extract the product attributes we need from there.
And for example, in the subcategory, what do you have in the subcategory?
In the subcategory, we have the actual types of shoes that are here. For example, if we choose women's, we can see what kind of like shoes there are there. Here, like ankle boots, ballet shoes, and the categories that the store has.
Mm-hmm.
That the actual brand has. So everything is for, if it was a clothing brand, their categorization would be here, of course.
Mm-hmm. And so you basically follow the lead from the client, correct? At that level.
We follow the link. I'm sorry.
The lead from the client
mm-hmm.
in terms of attributes.
Yes. We work very closely with the client and their data. We analyze their data, their categorization, their catalogs, how they work as well. We also focus a lot on understanding their business processes as well to make the model as tailored to them as possible.
The reason why I mentioned that is because my experience is slightly different. Because if I let my clients decide that, you wouldn't be able to improve every business. Because unfortunately, the way they classify things is wrong. I don't say it's wrong at 100%, but sometimes it's only 10%, but sometimes it's 50%. I mean, one day I was invited to speak at an EPOS annual conference, and one of the lady I was asking, I said, what kind of product categories do you track in your business? And she tells me, Thierry, we do maternity tops, maternity dresses, maternity jeans, and then we do apparel and accessories. So my conclusion after so many maternity product categories she tracks, I say, you're a maternity shop. No, that's it. So what I would be tempted to tell you is trust them, but have the science to be able to challenge them, to maximize, because they, unfortunately, don't forget, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And unfortunately, on buying and merchandising, I see much more of things they don't know than things they do know. And for me, my quote to clients is, fashion success today is no more about what you know, it's about what you don't know. So those are my thoughts, so that we can get more out of your system, because I think it's a powerful thing. So I love it at that level.
I just wanted to add, it's a very helpful insight. However, what we are doing, we're very dependent on historical data that we analyze the patterns from. And unfortunately, yes, they might have wrong classifications, but they can't go back in time and reclassify things. This is how they stored and they put down their data. And usually this is what we start working with. We had actually in history done a project of optimizing categorization for a client, basically analyzing sales and trying to convince that their categorization is all wrong. But this is not what we typically do, and we try to use as much historical data as possible, and sometimes it is messy, and sometimes it is different formats, different classifications from different years. So even merging it all together throughout history is a challenge on its own. Yes, most of them try to do it better moving forward, but unfortunately, the past can't be changed, and we use a lot of that.
Of course, no, I agree.
If it
And
makes sense.
yeah, if for example, how long does it take you to let's say that in June 2020, you have worked with the client to basically crunch all the numbers. How much forward you do the forecast? You do it over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months?
It depends on the production times. So whenever they're planning the new season and the lead times that need to be for production. So if it's fast fashion and it's something that changes every month, there will be a 1 month ahead forecast. And if they need to make decisions 4 to 6 months in advance, and this is when they make like the bulk production orders, and all that, this is the range of forecast that we do. So it depends on different categories have different lead times. So basically, yes, whatever we're working with, it needs to fit a specific business case and be useful and helpful and implemented at some point.
Yeah, and I would say, do you revise the numbers every month?
We don't typically do that because this is a pre-production numbers. Those are more of guidelines for merchandisers, and a lot goes, a lot of things can change within 6 months. So, for example, they would decide not to, the final numbers is placed by the merchandiser, and they decide based on their subjective knowledge and our guidelines. So there are a lot of factors that might change the forecast. If we are tracking them and are able to incorporate, we'll be revising those numbers. But there is a lot that can happen within those 6 months that can influence the exact numbers. Those are more of a guidelines to choose between categories, between geographies, and so on.
So basically, your system is really at this buying pre-production. You're not joining the client as soon as you gave him his initial numbers. You're not joining him in the journey every month.
We have the BI part that Irina started showing, and I think she'll continue. This is where you can track all that. But this is the biggest challenge, is making that pre-production decision. This is like where you can avoid a lot of mistakes beforehand. And this is the first step. If you get it right, you might avoid a lot of like dead stocks later, even just getting this initial number, because most of the forecasts are now done like based on previous historical data or previous year. And for example, now the COVID happened, and what numbers can be used if, going forward. So this is where we step in and help.
No, I definitely like what you say, because once again, one big mistake in this field is people try to plan, autumn winter 20 based on autumn winter 19. When those numbers are dead, they have to factor in, the current sales and what's happening over the last 3 months, and draw a conclusion and trend out of that. So I think that yes, the way they plan things is flawed from the start. So I totally get that, your system is going to be much producing better results, and the logic is going to be there, which some of them don't have. Is it easy for you to track information on social media, to find those elements of trend? How does that work? I hope it's not necessarily a question you have received before, and I wasn't there on the call, so I apologize for that.
Obviously, internet is the biggest, source of information out there today. And no, it's not difficult to track. The most thing is the most, not challenge, but a lot of work goes into tailoring this global information for a specific client. So, for example, shoe wear might not be influenced by some top influencers as some luxury brands. So just testing that correlation is where we do the most of the work, and just finding the exact things that work for a specific brand. This is why we use historical data and the brand specific data, just to find whatever they are sensitive to.
Yep. Do you the fact that you have I would say the internet to give you a lot of trend information, what is actually relevant? Because of course you're not necessarily going to get easily sales of a specific attribute, or whatever we might be willing to call it. So what do you rely on to be able to make that assessment as accurate as possible?
So as Irina was talking previously, the attributes, the product attributes, for example, if they're planning a new collection, the brand is planning a new collection and they have a lot of color yellow in it. This is what we are doing. We're tracking color yellow and seeing any projections, what's going to happen with it in future, and how the brand is actually responding to any color, if the clients are even sensitive to the color change for this specific brand. So we take that information and we put it in our models, and basically it just improves our forecast and tells us that if you produce a yellow garment, your sales will be much better, for example, if you produce a blue garment.
Okay.
I hope that answers the question, if I'm understanding you right.
Well, it's a I'm sure it's a complex question because for example, if the person does just footwear and wants to understand maybe the strength of the yellow in the future collection, how are you going to handle that? I mean, what I mean is that, is it easy to, I mean, do you, yeah, what kind of how do you, what's the process to be able to track relevance of the information you're going to find on the net, to be able to, you know, manage that color yellow? I'm asking that also because ultimately one of the challenge, I believe, is knowing the strength of the yellow vis-a-vis to the other colors. So one needs to be able to extract all the data tracked online by not only seeing the strength of the yellow, but also comparing it to the other colors to be able to tell the brand, look, your yellow should be 20% of sales and not 35. Therefore, the quantities will be amended accordingly.
Yeah, we are not giving recommendations for which colors to use. We are taking a collection that the designer has made, and we are evaluating its future performance, if it's going to do well or it's going to do poorly. There are a lot of platforms out there that are actually forecasting trends and saying what's the next projection, let's say how the yellow will do in the nearest future. It will go up if everybody will start talking about it, and so on and so forth. So we take those numbers and we put them in the model. So when we have you know, the collection that the designer is planning, and we have those attributes, basically our model will tell you how it will perform in future, if the sales will be higher or they will be lower.
But when you say lower or higher, are you so based on historical data, you're going to say, okay, you can plan more, you can plan less, and then you give them in that case a percentage increase?
No, it's usually the number. So we have an item, right, that consists of different product attributes. So let's say there are 10 of them: the color, the length, the style, the everything. So by taking historical data, we I don't know how to explain this. We are basically projecting, if you combine all those attributes, what will the future sales will be. This is how much will be bought. And it comes from the data that we are forecasting, it's for each store, for each geography, and for each new item. So basically, it will give a forecast that in that store, in that geography, this item with a specific number of attributes will be sold in this amount.
Okay.
And this is the number that you can use for comparisons. Of course, there will be a lot of things that, for example, they will not stock up that store in those amounts, or they will decide to, you know, revalidate. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen within 6 months, and the execution of that number that will be influenced. But in general, it will give you a very good idea how well these things will do, especially in comparison to each other. And if you need to look at that geography versus store clusters or anything, this is, you know, a good of a guideline to make financial decisions or any planning decisions up front.
Okay. And
Guys,
so
just to say hi to everyone. Hi Maria, how the
Hi,
startup,
Stefano. Hi.
for the attendees. I'm jumping on different virtual room, and you did a great job. You're a great pitch. Thank you all the participants. And we were more than 800 persons from more than 20 countries with more than 40 luxury brands with 50% the top executives. So we are very happy that we are building a global ecosystem. So say hi everyone, and then keep having your conversation, and then Maria and the team, we're going to talk with you shortly. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
well, I let others to ask questions because I wouldn't like to ask too many. Thank you so much for the insight.
Any other questions? Alexandra? Razan?
Alors, maybe now, if nobody has questions, I'm happy to understand. What is your core best client? How would you define him in terms of size, number of people? You know, what is this ideal client size?
We aim at large and middle large companies, fashion retailers that have a distributed number of stores, physical stores. And why we aim at these kind of customers is because really huge companies, most of them already have internal data science team who are developing this kind of solution, are trying to develop it internally, and they're not, open to just like startup solutions. And very small brands, so they usually have very small data, so which is not enough for us to make an accurate forecast.
Right.
So that's who we aim at.
And when you say, mid-large to large, how many stores would you say is an ideal situation for you to, to consider it as a perfect client?
Well, the number of stores is probably not the most critical number. The most critical number would be, do you hear me?
Yeah, of course. Yep, I do.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So the most critical number would be the years of historical data the brand has. And the number of stores is usually, when the company is very small, it's easier for them to make everything manually. So I would say it's starting from maybe 50, 100 stores. So it starting to being kind of creating business value.
Yeah. No, especially because too often people who start having a chain of stores, what they do is they regroup them, and when they consolidate, they go from top to bottom instead of going from bottom to top. So I think your system is going to do a much better job. There's no doubt about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Once again, as soon as you apply already a process and a little bit of logic, you can beat a lot of people.
We hope so.
Oh, in that specific field, I think it's the benefit is greater than you may think. Yeah. The only thing is, as usual, people may believe they know it all, and they may not be willing to listen. So of course, the maximizing the conversion and making them understand the benefit is going to be key. But I see a lot of flaws when it comes to that specific, part of the business, meaning buying and merchandising. And there are really crazy things happening. So you're able to give them a little bit of art and science, which is much needed.
Yeah, that's what we hear from most of the brands, that they have this kind of issue, but they are very careful about, adjusting in new solutions, because sometimes, especially, since we are addressing merchandisers, they sometimes view our solution as a competition, that might substitute their jobs. So sometimes.
That's it. Do you try to open the door via the CEO straight away, or at what level do you try to, or maybe who do you try to talk to? Or what has been maybe most successful if you?
Well, we're trying to go both ways. So our solution is mainly, used by merchandisers. So we were trying to address retail merchandisers first with our solution, explaining them that we are going to help them, in their day-to-day work. But also, the other way is to go through the CEO if it's possible, because the main tool we're using now is either LinkedIn connections,
Yeah.
or like we use connections via Startup Bootcamp. So CEO are not all, very often open to talk to a startup. So most often it's easier to get through the merchandiser. But, as I mentioned, some merchandisers view us as a competition, but some are actually very open and, start moving us through the company and actually helping us, to reach CEO. So.
No, and the larger the organization, the more you want to be able to speak to more than one person, because you never know who's going to say yes, but the others can still influence even the person who would potentially make the decision. So
Yes, in some companies we were actually helped by marketing managers, which we didn't expect, that would kind of be interested in our solution and would help us, but they were like the main movers of our solution within the company. So it's
because I can tell you that with a great merchandise plan, you open all the right questions in a business. So I agree with you. People from marketing can see the benefit of having that clarity and vision of what's going to be happening.
Yeah, so that's what happens. I see Denise has joined us as well.
Well, I'm going to stop asking questions.
No, your questions are very interesting.
Can I ask you something? I mean, I don't know what's your name. The one that you're just doing the questions now.
Oh, Thierry.
Thierry. Thierry.
From Global Fashion Management. Sorry, I apologize.
Thierry. Yeah. In fact, I didn't see your name. So you said that in your experience, you saw a lot of mistakes and consequently a lot of space for these kind of solutions. But in your experience, what is the main reason for that mistakes in buying merchandising? Is lack of data, lack of accuracy, like you were saying for example, in the product classifications, or because they are companies that they are more design driven than number driven than merchandising driven? What is in your experience?
I would say first I would put it, Marco, at the core of all of us is, we don't want to adapt we don't want to include newness. I mean, maybe we're going to bring new products for sure, but when it comes to being challenged, bringing critical thinking to the table, wow, it's really hard. Afterwards, I don't believe there's proper retail training out there. Real quality retail training. It's not your clients, but you know what? I see the same mistakes whether you're talking a one store operation or big ones. I had conversation with people, who provide the opportunity to do maybe a little bit of your work, but more on phase 2, phase 3, and you realize that the logic of those big retailers, those having 100, several, 500, 1,000 stores, is that they're gonna. So this is why your system is great. But what is step 2? The step 2 is you have manufacturing. You have the right numbers. What is step 2? Well, you've got 1,000 store, or let's make it 100 stores. How do you ship the goods into each store? And basically, some of the people tell you what they do is they ship 80% of their stock from the warehouse to the store. Well, why is that a mistake? Well, because Marco, you, me, Irina, whoever, nobody knows which style is going to work. So if you push too much of the stock too early in the store, what's going to happen? You're not going to sell it, and you won't be able to afford to bring it back to a warehouse or send it out to another store, and therefore you're going to actually create more discounts than necessary. So even the logic of saying, no, I'm only going to ship 50-60% of the goods in the store, and then based on sales replenish, this is a logic that many of those large retailers don't have. And so you just multiply that problem across every situation they face. So once again, I'm not saying everybody's bad. You have some really good people, but you've got a lot who are really working, with old management styles, and that's it. On occasion, they hate data. I mean, if I was to show you one dashboard I use, and you were to look at dashboards they use, wow, you would cry. Okay. And sometimes they have sophisticated dashboard, but they can't make a decision because it's it doesn't make sense. Sometimes I don't see the right KPIs being analyzed. You can have people who have 15 years of experience, and if you ask what's the GMROI, you're not going to get an answer. Mm-hmm. So, so I'm afraid to say, Marco, that there is going to be issues at management level. Are we open to newness? Are we open to critical thinking?
Always the problem anyway.
And of course, don't forget some of the business owners could be of, in French would say la vieille garde, the old way of doing.
The old-fashioned.
And when you're going to talk about AI, digital, they're going to freak out. Mm-hmm. So I don't say all of them, but once again, you've got those situations. On occasion, I don't see them very good with numbers. I agree, and then I think your colleagues have mentioned it. Is Thierry? Sometimes we have to deal with data coming from maybe different system, meaning that every year we don't necessarily get the same data.
Yeah.
And I can promise you, there is not one single client on which I was able to say, Thierry, you're not going to change the product categories that you need to track to help them do a better job. Not one. I don't say that it's always significant and that I change 80% of their product category structure, but there's always one or two. Yeah, because they don't understand it. The logic of it, they don't understand. And a little case study, because it will apply to you, whether they have 100 store or just one store. I'm in Mayfair, so that having a store over there, just one store, if you don't do $1.5 million, I'm not even too sure you're going to break even. And I sit down with the CEO, the retail director, and I say, what's your number one product category? Dresses. Cool. How much is that in terms of total sales? 40%. Great. So what do you track every month? Dresses. Cool. What kind of dresses do you do? Short, yeah. Long, yes. Okay, so what do you track every month? Well, he didn't understand why I was asking the question the second time, but he told me dresses. Okay. So could you tell me, do you know whether you need to bring 30% short dresses, 70% long dresses, or the reverse? Guess what he said? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, but if you don't know, Marco, what's going to happen? You're having a double loss because one class is overstock. That's why you need your system. And the other class is understock. You lose sales and you lose the customer. So it's to some extent, it's not only a double sell, because for me, when you're understock, I don't have a single retailer who doesn't tell me, Thierry, if I'm understock, it's going to cost me a bum to get the customer to come back. If I manage to get him back or her back. So, when you prompt the question, Marco, they give you the right answer. Can they come with the questions on their own?
Mm-hmm.
You see, I'm silent. Not always. So, so that's why I think you've got a powerful tool. I mean, you work for the brand. You work for Gfaive.
No.
Oh, sorry.
I'm
it doesn't matter. I hope that what I'm saying
I'm
is
a merchandiser.
Okay.
I actually have a little different experience because my experience is mostly in luxury brands, and I think with different extent, but there is a very good uses of data and understanding in luxury brands, to my experience. Really, like depending on the company, but average, I would say so.
But for example, are you
The
happy
two cases that you told me, I never experienced them.
So
but I can understand that. I mean, the market is big, and probably there are a lot of. I mean, I have a particular point of view on like middle to big luxury brands. So,
and so, for example, when it comes to product category, because for me, it starts at what you're putting in your system to avoid the the junk.
Classification is always a problem.
So that you agree that is a problem?
Yeah, I agree absolutely. Yeah, that I agree.
So
I agree, but I see also that I think that for a company starting in a way also to collaborate on, for example, like with a company like Gfaive, to implement can also be a push, a driver to also understanding and changing. That comes back what you were saying, that you have to have this mentality to embrace the change, for sure, but it can be a driver also. When you realize that if you are also doing classification in a better way, then you can have immediately different results also in planning and in forecasting.
Yeah, because Gfaive mentioned it. With clients where you start, doing things right, you can maintain the sales, even grow the sales, and reduce the average stock by 30%. That's possible in some organization because that's it. They're way overstock.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is why I emphasized at the beginning the importance of product categories or attributes, because it's true that if you nail that well, then you can really help the client do a really very nice job and see the ROI very quickly. Just on that. Absolutely. And because also when you were working with your businesses, did some of them have many stores or not?
Yeah, 150 something. I mean,
so how are you planning? How are you planning the buying and merchandising per store? Were you planning it from top to bottom to top, individually or by groups? How are you maximizing that?
Well, I was working on central merchandising functions, so there was always like regional buyers. So what do you mean top to bottom? From the
top to bottom is that in some organization you've got the impression that the management is going to say you're going to do 1 million, so we're going to manufacture to do 1 million, but the reality is the store can't do 1 million.
Okay.
So what you want is to be able to plan from of course historical sales, but on occasion the management wants to push for something which unfortunately is not realistic, And that's when you could be creating either an overstock or
No,
sometimes.
no. But in my experience, I thought you were talking about top to bottom. I was thinking about buying from bigger stores to small stores. No, I'm planning the forecast and planning sales. I always experience more of a bottom to top, actually.
Okay.
I mean, starting from the stores and the retail manager. This is always the starting point in the companies where I worked for in more luxury brands.
Now, the question is, how do you handle when you have, that's a big chain? Do you still lift off the numbers from individual stores, or do you try to regroup them and apply a similar rule across a group of stores?
You mean, well, there is a clusterization, but normally not for forecasting. I've never seen that, but for like master orders, direction from the center to the buyers in terms of assortment. For that, yes, clusterization also. But for the real process of sales planning, not really. Always on a store based.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a question from Denise.
Perfect. Yes, Denise.
Yes, and it's, I think, Yelena can answer. The question was, can we help to explain again how we gain the proper information outside historical sales to make necessary projections by classification? Yelena, can you answer?
Yes. So we a lot of when we talk about historical data, it's not only historical sales; it's all the information from any marketing activity, stocks availability. It's much more than just sales data. And even if there is a customer data, you know, the loyalty programs and everything, we would like to get our hands on as much as possible, obviously. And for external data, we try out a lot. So now with the COVID-19, we actually started testing a lot of macroeconomic variables like consumer sentiment and, you know, up to oil prices. And basically any trends that would indicate when we're going to be out and how the sales will look afterwards, and probably different scenarios based on that. We also use external fashion trends, again, based on product attributes. We use data, social media data, and any usually, like, if the companies, sometimes brands, especially bigger brands, they collect all this data in their social departments. They do the tracking. So they usually have that data. And if not, it's something that we collect and utilize. And I don't know, Irene, did I forget anything?
No, I think you...
And all the seasonality, all the, you know, time relevant data, this is all can be, you know, extracted and used from historical data as well. The store closings and all that. I hope that answers the question. Okay, you're welcome.
Maria, what about the competitors' data?
It's something, I'm Elena. Yeah, it's something that we are planning to, yes, we're planning to use that as well. Obviously, many brands, they track and they actually do and plan a lot of activities based around competition. Again, if now at our stage, we're planning to utilize this data later. But if the company has data and collects it and tracks it on its own, of course, obviously, it's something that we are going to do and use in our models. The only challenge of using competitive data is that there is no way of knowing what your competitors will do 6 months ahead. Yeah. You react to many things when they happen. Everybody releases collections at the same time, pretty much. but there is probably, in terms of numbers, the forecast of what competition will be doing in future, it's as guessing as as the subjectively as the brand can. Maybe they know it better, but yes, if the company has that data, we would like to use it and evaluate. The problem is knowing what will be in their head 6 months ahead.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Ideas, insights to share? I see Guido is here. Hi, Guido. One of our mentors as well. Dennis, maybe you would like us to show our demo of our platform a little bit more in detail.
Irina, we got a question
Okay.
from Denise. How can we contact you?
Okay, I can write down my email in the chat, so you can contact me directly. And Irina, could you show our platform?
Yes, I will. Okay, just 1 second again, so that I show the platform. Just 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I think I'll start from the beginning. I'm not quite sure if Denise was in the beginning of when I showed the first time, so I will show again. Here I would like to first again just say that the most important thing of our platform are actually the forecasts, the models, the machine learning models that use the internal and external data. So like Yelena explained as well how we do it, we use product attributes to do the forecast. So that is why we also forecast new items that the client did not sell before. And we are able to present those and give the opportunity to merchandisers to analyze the results of our forecasting models on multiple levels and dimensions, so they can see it all on category, subcategory like SKU, see it on specific geography in a specific store, see the sales of, but also by product attributes. So they will see the forecasts and here and the actual sales as well. I'm not quite sure if colleagues, please, if Denise has some questions, you tell me, because I can't see the chat right now. So how exactly do we help the merchandiser? We provide support to merchandisers and also buyers from the moment of the planning of the new collection. So, for example, when we say we can help them also right from the beginning, when they are together with the finance department doing the budgets, the open to buys, they can click and see, for example, the forecasts on the category level, understand where they can expand, how the depth that should go in. When they do the guidelines for the briefings for the designers, the guidelines, they can see rankings. So these rankings are not how their previous collection worked, it's forecasts, the new collection. They see rankings of what will be demanded by, again, the categories, subcategories as well. They can see the ranking of colors, materials, by different geography, by different stores. So they can use all of this when they're doing the guidelines. Then for buying, support for buyers, and not only buyers, but also retail merchandisers for their master order. They can click and see up to, for example, SKU level. They can see the demand. They see which items will be the most demanded, that they should tell the buyers that they have to add those items. And the buyer can click on his cluster of stores, see what will be demanded the most, see the numbers that we recommend, and make the decisions. And also, when we go past the pre-production phase, we allow merchandisers to also track the performance of the current collection that is being sold, to see the main metrics, to see their best and worst selling items, to see reports on different dimensions, to see weekly reports, monthly, to compare that with the previous week, last year, and so on. So we have a very flexible system that can provide the needed reports that a brand uses. For example, if they're used to something, and also customize everything to their design team. They have here forecast rankings. So these are actually forecasts of the product attributes that will be demanded in the next collection, the new season. So using this instrument, they give guidelines to their designers. Then we support the next phase as well for the buying. We have reports for buyers and retail merchandisers. They can use this and see down on SKU level how much for each specific store we recommend them to buy. And also in the last phase, after the pre-production phase, in the sales, we allow merchandisers in one platform to monitor their sales and see how their items are performing, to see also the best, worst items, and also and see that on multiple levels again with these filters. And various reports that give them weekly sales analysis and sales analysis down to SKU levels. So that is quite short about our platform. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to write. Or say if your microphone works, yeah. Okay, I don't see any questions right now. My microphone, okay. Maybe do you have any questions on our platform? No problem, it's really no problem. Or maybe you would like us to send a presentation of our platform and organize another call where in more details we can tell you about it. Oh, that's nice to hear. The software company you work for also made solutions for fashion. It would be interesting to see other experiences as well. Thank you, Marco. Thank you so much for your feedback.
Bye-bye. Talk later.
Thank you, Marco. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye, Marco.
Bye-bye.